My brother stranded me and my kids at an airport in a foreign country without money or documents so he could take my house. But when he opened the front door, we were already inside waiting with a surprise. The door clicked open. I heard it from the hallway closet, where I was crouched between my winter coats and a box of Christmas decorations, one hand pressed flat against my daughter's back to keep her still. My son was pressed into my other side, breathing through his mouth the way he does when he's trying very hard not to make a sound. Ryan's voice came first, confident, almost cheerful. See? Told you the locksmith wasn't even necessary. Still had a key from when I watered the plants. A second voice, a woman's, one I didn't recognize yet, answered him flatly. Mr. Sorensen, I'm going to need you to step back from the doorway. Ryan laughed. Actually laughed, like she'd made a joke. Who are you supposed to? Angela Park. I'm the estate attorney for Eleanor Sorensen's trust, and you're currently standing in a house you do not have legal authority to enter. I felt my son's hand find mine in the dark of the closet. 3 days ago, he'd been crying into my coat in an airport 4,000 miles from here, asking if his uncle was coming back for us. Now he was 8 feet away from that same uncle, and I was the one telling him, silently, not yet, baby, not yet. I want to tell you how we got here. It matters, because none of this, the frozen title, the sealed letter, the 2 officers standing in my grandmother's living room, none of it happened by luck. It happened because 3 days earlier, my brother made the mistake of thinking I would fall apart quietly. I didn't. My name is Clara Sorensen. I'm 34. I work as a paralegal at a mid-sized firm in Ohio, which is a detail that's going to matter a lot more than it sounds like it should. I have 2 kids, Maya, who's 7, and Theo, who's 5. And I have a brother, Ryan, who is 37 and has spent most of the last 2 years trying to convince our entire family that I stole something from him. I didn't steal anything. My grandmother, Eleanor Sorensen, left me her house, the one on Birchwood Lane where she raised my mother, where I spent every summer of my childhood shelling peas on the back porch and losing checkers games I was clearly supposed to win. She left it to me, specifically, by name, in a will she updated 4 years before she died. Ryan didn't take that well. It's not fair, he told me, the week after the reading. We were standing in her kitchen, the one with the yellow curtains she never let anyone replace. You know Mom needs help, you know I need help, and Grandma just, decided you were the favorite? She decided I was the one who visited her every Sunday for 11 years, I said. That's not the same as favorite. My mother, Diane, took a more diplomatic tack, which is to say she took Ryan's side without admitting she was taking a side. Clara, sweetheart, I just think, given everything Ryan's going through with the business, and given that you have your job, maybe it would make sense to sell and split it. Grandma would want the family to stay close. Grandma wanted me to have the house, I said. That's what to Clara means in a legal document, Mom. My father mostly stayed out of it, except for one conversation late at night where he told me I should just sign it over to keep peace. I remember standing in my kitchen holding the phone and feeling something in my chest go very cold and very still. Just sign it over. As if a house my grandmother had specifically, deliberately, by name given to me was a parking dispute to be smoothed out for the sake of Thanksgiving. I said no. I've kept saying no for 2 years. Ryan escalated in small ways at first. Passive comments at family dinners, a joke about how he still had a key from the years he used to check on Grandma's mail, a drunken voicemail once at 1 a.m. that I saved and never played for anyone, where he told me I'd regret this, and that I always thought I was better than everyone. I told myself it was grief talking. People say ugly things when they're mourning and broke and watching someone else inherit the thing they think they needed more. I gave him room. I gave him 2 years of room, actually, because some small, stubborn, hopeful part of me kept believing my brother would eventually just be my brother again. Then 6 weeks ago, he called and suggested a family trip to Portugal. Before the kids get too old to enjoy it, he said, my treat partly. Let's just be a family again, Clara. I should have known. I did know, somewhere underneath the part of me that wanted so badly for it to be true. But hope is a specific kind of stupid, and I let it talk me onto a plane. We landed in Lisbon on a Tuesday. For 4 days, it actually was what he promised. Pastries in Belém, Maya feeding pigeons in a plaza, Theo falling asleep on Ryan's shoulder on the train back from Sintra. I let myself relax. I let myself think maybe grief really had run its course. On the 5th day, at the airport for our return flight, Ryan offered to grab breakfast for the kids while I got Theo's shoe retied. I handed him the document folder, passports, both kids' birth certificates, my ID, the return itinerary, for exactly the amount of time it takes to double knot a 5-year-old sneaker. When I looked up, he was gone. So was the folder. So was my wallet, which had been sitting on top of it in the outer pocket. My phone had 6% battery and no charger, because the charger was in the bag Ryan had also insisted on carrying, since your hands are full. I called him. He answered on the 2nd ring. Airport noise loud behind him, which meant he hadn't gone far. He just wasn't planning on coming back. Where are you? I asked. I kept my voice level. Maya was already looking up at me with the particular stillness kids get when they sense something's wrong before they understand what. Ryan laughed. Somewhere you can't follow, Clara. Ryan, my kids' passports are in that folder. Then I guess you'll figure something out. You always do. A pause. By the time you get home, the house situation will be handled. You should have just signed when Mom asked you to. He hung up. I stood there in Humberto Delgado Airport holding a phone with 4% battery, no money, no documents, and 2 children who had just watched their uncle vanish mid-sentence. Maya started crying. Theo pressed his face into my coat and didn't say anything at all, which was somehow worse. An airline employee, a young woman with a Lisbon accent and a name tag that said Inez, touched my arm. Senora, are you all right? Do you need assistance? I looked down at my kids. I looked at the security camera mounted above gate 14. Yes, I said. I need the police. I need my embassy. And I need someone to pull the footage footage from that camera because my brother just stole our documents and I'm about to make his life extremely difficult. Here's what Ryan forgot. In his confidence that stranding me in a foreign country would strand my life along with it. I've been a paralegal for 9 years. Preparing for the worst is professionally my entire job. Before we'd left Ohio, I'd scanned every passport, every birth certificate, and every page of my grandmother's deed. The scans lived in 3 places: my email, a cloud drive, and most importantly, my attorney's inbox. Angela Park had handled my grandmother's estate from the beginning, and 2 weeks before the trip, on an instinct I still can't fully explain, I'd sent her the entire folder with a note. If anything happens on this trip, call me first, then call the police. I hadn't known what anything would look like. I just knew in some old, tired way that I'd learned not to trust my brother's smile. Airport police reviewed camera footage from Gate 14 within the hour. It showed Ryan lifting the document folder from the outer pocket of my carry-on, checking over his shoulder once and walking toward the departures board, not toward any food kiosk. It showed him boarding a flight alone 40 minutes later. It showed my daughter crying beside me while I dialed a phone that was dying in my hand. I sat in a small windowless office with a Policia de Segurança Pública officer named Rui Andrade while he typed my statement into a form with a French keyboard, the letters in the wrong places, apologizing every few minutes for how long it was taking. "Your children," he said gently, glancing at Maya, who was asleep against a stack of coats someone had lent us. "They will need emergency documents. This we can help with. The theft? This is more complicated because he is family. He's not going to stay family for much longer," I said. I didn't fully believe that yet. I was running on adrenaline and 9 years of professional habit, but something in my voice must have sounded certain because Officer Andrade looked at me for a second longer than the moment required, then nodded and kept typing. Maya woke somewhere in the middle of the statement, disoriented, asking where we were and why the room had no windows. I told her we were waiting for new travel papers, which was true, and that everything was being handled, which was the kind of true that costs something to say out loud when you don't fully believe it yet yourself. Theo didn't wake up at all. He'd fallen asleep sitting upright against a stack of borrowed coats, one fist curled around the strap of my bag like he was guarding it in his sleep. And I remember thinking, absurdly, that a 5-year-old shouldn't already understand that things can be taken from you if you stop holding on. Officer Andrade printed the statement, had me sign 3 copies, and slid a card across the desk with a case number written on the back in blue pen. "For when you call to check," he said. "It will take time. These things always take more time than the person waiting wants them to." By the time we left that office, I'd learned my hands wouldn't stop shaking even when the rest of me had gone calm. It's a strange, specific kind of exhaustion. The kind where your body keeps running on a threat your mind has already started managing. I borrowed a charger from a stranger at the gate, a retired school teacher from Manchester named Barbara, who fed my kids crisps out of her carry-on and didn't ask a single question, which I will be grateful for until the day I die. At 11% battery, I called Angela Park. Angela had been my grandmother's attorney for 14 years before becoming mine. She's the kind of lawyer who answers emails within 20 minutes regardless of the hour, which either means she never sleeps or she simply decided a long time ago that other people's crises were worth interrupting her own life for. "Clara." Her voice went sharp the second she heard mine. "What happened?" I told her. "All of it. The folder. The 6% battery." Ryan's voice saying somewhere you can't follow. There was a pause on the line, and I could hear typing. "I have the scans," she said. "I've had them since you sent them." "Okay, here's what's happening right now while we're talking. I'm calling the sheriff's office. I'm calling the county recorder to flag the deed, and I'm calling Detective Marcus Whitfield, because if your brother stole documents to facilitate a property fraud, that's not a family matter anymore. That's a criminal one. Angela, I don't have proof he's doing anything with the house yet. I just have him being cruel at an airport. You have him abandoning 2 minors in a foreign country to gain unsupervised access to a property he has no legal claim to, immediately following 2 years of documented pressure to force a transfer," Angela said. "That is not ambiguous, Clara. That is a pattern. Now, do you still have your mother's number memorized, or is that in the folder too?" It was in the folder too. Angela didn't need it. She already had it from the estate paperwork 4 years earlier. By midnight Lisbon time, she was on a call with Portuguese authorities and the sheriff's office back home simultaneously, somehow in a way I still don't fully understand the mechanics of. By morning, emergency travel documents were being processed through the U.S. Embassy. By afternoon, my mother sent me a screenshot. She sent it to the wrong thread. It was meant for someone else in the family group chat, Aunt Patricia probably, or maybe Ryan himself, forwarded by accident to the group instead of privately. But it landed in my messages, and I read it standing in the embassy waiting room with Theo asleep across 3 plastic chairs. "Ryan, she's stuck. Get the locksmith ready." "Mom, what about the kids?" "Ryan, she'll figure it out. She always does." I stared at that last line for a long time. She always does. Not because it was cruel. Because it was true. And my own mother had said it like it settled something. Like my competence was a resource to be spent rather than a burden I'd been carrying alone since I was 26 years old, and learned nobody was coming to help me with anything, ever, unless I built to help myself. I didn't cry. I wanted to. I sat very still instead, and I forwarded the screenshot to Angela with 3 words. "He's moving now." Angela filed an emergency injunction to freeze the property title before Ryan's flight had even landed on U.S. soil. I didn't understand the full mechanics of it until she explained it to me later, in the kind of patient, specific language she uses when she wants a client to actually retain information instead of just nodding. "A lease pendens," she said, "is a notice that gets recorded against a property when there's active litigation touching its ownership. The second I filed it, any title company, any locksmith with half a brain, any bank, they all see a red flag if they check. It doesn't stop him from walking in with a key. key. It stops him from doing anything legally once he's inside. He doesn't care about legal. He cares about being inside. I know, Angela said, which is why I'm not planning to just be a piece of paper sitting in a filing cabinet. I'm planning to be standing in the living room. The sheriff's office got involved formally once Angela laid out the pattern. 2 years of documented pressure, a voicemail I'd saved and finally sent her, the one from 1 a.m., the one where he said I'd regret this. And now an abandonment of minors abroad timed suspiciously close to a locksmith appointment my mother had in her panic, accidentally confirmed existed. A deputy named Renata Cole called me directly, 12 years with the department, to ask me to walk through the timeline one more time. I want to be clear with you, Mrs. Sorensen, she said. Family property disputes usually stay civil. What moves this into criminal territory is the abandonment charge and the potential fraud angle if he attempted to use those stolen documents or force entry under false pretenses. We're not going to sit this one out. I thanked her. My voice cracked on the second syllable of thank, which embarrassed me, though I don't think she noticed. Or if she did, she was kind enough not to show it. Angela called back 2 hours later with a name I didn't recognize yet. I brought in Marcus Feldman, she said. Forensic accountant, 20 years doing exactly this kind of work, tracing money and paper trails when someone's trying to move fast on a property they don't legally control. If Ryan's touched a bank account, a loan application, anything with your name or the house's parcel number on it in the last 6 months, Marcus will find it before Ryan even remembers he did it. Marcus called me himself the next morning, his voice unhurried in a way that made the whole conversation feel less like an emergency and more like a routine appointment, which I found strangely calming. I've already flagged something, he said. An inquiry against the property 2 days before your flight. Somebody pulled a preliminary valuation on it, the kind a bank runs before approving a line of credit. I need 48 hours to confirm who initiated it, but I want you to know it's there, and I want you to know we're already looking. He was setting it up before we even left the country, I said. It wasn't a question. It was the sentence finally clicking into place. That would be my read too, Marcus said. But I don't testify to reads. I testify to paper. Give me the 48 hours. The call from Angela that actually made my hands shake, more than the airport, more than the screenshot, came 18 hours later, while we were still waiting on emergency documents. Clara, I need to tell you something and I need you to be sitting down. I'm sitting on an airport floor holding my son's shoe. I don't think I can get more sitting than this. Your grandmother left a sealed letter with the firm, one I wasn't authorized to open unless a specific condition was triggered. It was triggered an hour ago. Eleanor Sorensen, it turned out, had anticipated exactly this. Not the specifics. She couldn't have known about Portugal, about a document folder stolen mid-shoelace, but the shape of it, the pattern of a family member trying to force, threaten, or pressure me out of the house she'd deliberately given me by name. The letter, dated 4 years before her death, stated that if any family member attempted to coerce, threaten, or abandon me in relation to the property, that member's name would be permanently struck from every trust distribution and inheritance claim tied to her estate, retroactive to the date of the offending act. Executor's discretion final. She built a trapdoor, Angela said, a quiet one. I don't think even your mother knows it exists. I read the scanned copy Angela sent me twice. My hands were shaking by the second read, not from fear this time, but from something closer to being seen, by a woman who'd been dead for 2 years, who had somehow known her grandson well enough to build a legal consequence around a betrayal none of us had witnessed yet. Maya woke up somewhere over the Atlantic and asked if Uncle Ryan was going to say sorry. I don't know, baby, I told her, which was the most honest thing I'd said all day. Theo, half asleep, asked a smaller, worse question. Is he still my uncle? I didn't answer that one either. We landed in Ohio 31 hours after Ryan boarded his flight alone. Angela was waiting at arrivals, which I hadn't expected and will never forget. A 58-year-old estate attorney standing at baggage claim at 6 a.m., holding 2 stuffed animals she'd apparently bought at the airport gift shop for kids she'd never met because she'd guessed correctly that they'd need something soft to hold. The title's frozen, she told me in the car. The bank's been notified. He tried opening a home equity line against the property 2 days before your flight to Portugal, which is now sitting in a fraud review queue courtesy of Detective Whitfield. And Renata Cole has a deputy stationed near the house because we have reason to believe he's going to try entry today. Today, he texted your mother an hour ago. Locksmith ready by noon. He doesn't know the title's frozen. He doesn't know about the letter. He doesn't know we know he tried the equity line. Angela glanced at me in the rearview mirror. Clara, I have to ask you something, and I need you to think about it clearly, not emotionally. Do you want to be there when he tries the door? I thought about the airport, about Maya's face when the gate closed, about she always does. Forwarded to the wrong thread like my endurance was a fact everyone had simply agreed on without asking me. Yes, I said. I want to be there. I want him to open that door and understand immediately that he already lost. Angela was quiet for a moment, the kind of quiet I'd come to recognize as her actually weighing something instead of simply agreeing to make me feel better. Then here's how we do it safely, she said. You and the kids stay out of the direct line of the door. Detective Whitfield leads. I speak first because I'm the one holding the paperwork that makes his key meaningless. You come out only once the room has already turned, not before. I don't want your children's first memory of this to be their uncle's face through a door he thinks is still his to open. He tried opening a home equity line on a house he doesn't own, I said, mostly to myself, testing the shape of it. Marcus found something? Marcus found everything, Angela said. The valuation request 2 days before your flight. A follow-up call to the bank the morning you landed in Lisbon, asking how quickly funds could be released against a pending inheritance transfer. He used those words, pending inheritance transfer, to a loan officer about a house whose title has never once left your name. That's not a family disagreement disagreement anymore, Clara. That's premeditation with a timestamp. I sat with that for the rest of the drive, watching Ohio go by in the gray early light, gas stations, a billboard for a personal injury lawyer, the exit for the elementary school Maya would be starting in the fall. Somewhere in the last 31 hours, my brother had stopped being a person I was disappointed in and become instead a case file with a timestamp. I didn't know yet whether that distinction would make things easier or harder. I only knew it was the truth, and that Grandma's yellow curtains were 40 minutes away, and that I intended to be standing inside them before Ryan ever got the chance to be. This is where the story catches up to where it started. Me crouched in a hallway closet with my children, listening to my brother's key turn in a lock he no longer had any legal right to use. Angela had gone in an hour earlier with Detective Marcus Whitfield, 19 years on the force, the kind of quiet, unhurried presence that makes a room feel smaller just by standing in it, and Deputy Renata Cole, the estate executor, a soft-spoken man named Harold Voss, who'd worked with my grandmother's finances for 2 decades, sat at the kitchen table with a folder of his own, because apparently everyone in this story had learned something from me about showing up prepared. I'd asked to hide with the kids rather than stand in the open, not for drama, because I didn't want Maya and Theo's first sight of their uncle's face in this to be through a locked door with police behind it. I wanted them safe in the closet with my hand on their backs, and I wanted to walk out only once the moment had already turned. The door clicked open. Ryan stepped inside, keys still in hand, mid-sentence about the locksmith not being necessary. "Mr. Sorensen," Angela said, "I'm going to need you to step back from the doorway." I heard the exact moment his voice changed, that fast, practiced confidence cracking down the middle. "Who are you supposed to?" "Angela Park, estate attorney for Eleanor Sorensen's trust. You're currently standing in a house you do not have legal authority to enter." "This is insane." "I have a key." "You have a key from a decade-old plant watering arrangement," Angela said, "to a property whose title was frozen by court order 40 hours ago, following an emergency filing related to the abandonment of 2 minors at Humberto Delgado Airport in Lisbon." A pause. I could picture her exactly, unhurried, unbothered, the same voice she used to explain a list pendants to me on an airport floor. "Detective Whitfield would like to ask you some questions." "About what?" Ryan's voice had gone thin. "About an attempted home equity fraud filed against a property you don't own," Detective Whitfield said, his voice low and even. "About a stolen document folder containing 2 minors' passports and a birth certificate, recovered on airport security footage in Lisbon. And about a voicemail, dated 14 months ago, in which you threatened your sister over this same property." I felt Maya's hand tighten in mine. I looked down at her, at Theo, and I made the decision that had been building in me since a stranger named Barbara handed my 5-year-old a bag of crisps and asked nothing in return. I stepped out of the closet. Ryan saw me before he said anything. I watched his face do something I'd genuinely never seen it do before. Not anger, not his usual practiced defensiveness, something closer to a held breath, like a man watching a bill finally come due after years of assuming it never would. "Clara." My name came out smaller than I'd ever heard him say it. "You left us at a gate," I said. My voice didn't shake, which surprised me more than anything else that week. "Maya asked if you were coming back." I lied to her because I didn't know how to tell a 7-year-old the truth. "I didn't think you thought I'd old," I said. "You thought stranding me meant stranding my life. You forgot what I do for a living, Ryan. You forgot I've spent 9 years getting paid to prepare for exactly this kind of day." He didn't answer. Detective Whitfield stepped forward, and the next part happened the way these things happen in real life. Quieter than you'd expect. More procedural. No shouting. No slammed doors. Whitfield read him his rights. Deputy Cole took the key from his hand as evidence. Ryan asked once, in a voice that had lost every ounce of its airport confidence, whether he could just talk to Mom first. "You can talk to your attorney first," Whitfield said. "That's how this works now." The fraud review on the home equity line moved fast. Once Detective Whitfield's report and Angela's filing landed on the same desk, Ryan had used a forged authorization, my signature, traced badly from an old birthday card, according to the handwriting analyst the bank's fraud department brought in, a woman named Priya Deshmukh with 22 years in forensic document examination. She testified later that the forgery wasn't sophisticated. "Whoever did this," she said in her deposition, "was counting on nobody looking closely. People rarely do until they have a reason." I had a reason. The abandonment charge stuck. The attempted fraud charge stuck. The airport footage, the frozen title, the forged signature, the voicemail, the screenshot my mother sent to the wrong thread. Angela laid it all out like exhibits in a case file, because that's what it had become. Exhibit A through Exhibit G, she told me once, half joking, half not. "Your brother built an entire folder of evidence against himself and mailed it to us for free." Ryan took a plea deal 4 months later. 18 months, mostly suspended, 5 years probation, mandatory restitution for legal fees, and a permanent no-contact order regarding the property. He avoided real prison time, which some people in my life thought was too lenient and others thought was exactly right. I didn't feel much of anything about the sentence itself. What I felt was the letter, my grandmother's letter, doing its quiet final work in the background, stripping his name from every trust distribution she'd left, retroactive to the day he abandoned us at that gate. My mother didn't speak to me for 2 months after the arrest. When she finally called, she didn't apologize for, "She'll figure it out, she always does." She apologized for sending it to the wrong thread, which told me everything I needed to know about which part she actually regretted. I've made my peace with that, mostly. Maya still asks about Uncle Ryan sometimes, less often now than she used to. Last week, she asked if he was still in trouble, and I told her yes, for a while longer, and that being in trouble was a thing that happened when someone hurt people and refused to stop on their own. Theo doesn't ask anymore. I don't know if that's healing or forgetting, and some days I'm not sure which one I'd prefer for him. The house on Birchwood Lane still has the yellow curtains. I haven't changed them. I sit on the back porch some evenings after the kids are asleep, in the same spot where I used to lose checkers games I was clearly supposed to win, and I think about a woman who died 2 years before any of this happened and somehow still managed to stand in the doorway with us. Angela sends a card every year around the anniversary of the letters triggering. Not celebratory, just a small note that says thinking of you and the kids. Detective Whitfield retired last spring. Deputy Cole made sergeant. Barbara, the retired schoolteacher from Manchester, still emails me photos of her garden twice a year, and I still don't know why a stranger decided to be that kind to my children on the worst day of their lives. And I've stopped trying to find a reason beyond the obvious one. Some people just are. Ryan wanted a house. What he actually lost was every claim to a family that might have eventually, slowly, in its own time, let him back in. He forgot I always find a way through. He never stopped to ask what happens to the people who try to stand in my way while I do.